Hello and welcome to Module 3 of History Class 494 of World War II Studies program at Arizona State University. We're Video Group 7. Today we're going to be talking about and discussing several different events that are considered potential start dates of World War II. The start date is often argued about, and we're going to cover several different views on the start date. Then as we go through this presentation, we're going to go through and explore each of these possibilities as to why they may or may not be the start date of World War II.
Here, on the 11th of November, 1918, succumbed the criminal pride of the German Reich, vanquished by the free peoples which it tried to enslave. Reads the monument at the site of the 1918 armistice, when the Germans were forced to surrender, and thus ended the Great War that started in 1914. The Germans and the Central Powers had recently signed a treaty with Russia that would allow Germany to concentrate troops and supplies on the Western Front. However, the German High Command was forced to sign an armistice after the Kaiser chose to abdicate the throne. This left the German state in an uproar, and the military had no choice but to concede to the Allies and sign the armistice. The armistice stopped the hostilities, but did not actually leave a peace. The combat had only paused. The Treaty of Peace between the Allied and Associate Powers and Germany, called the Treaty of Versailles, was signed on 28 June 1919, over 6 months from the armistice. The terms that Germany was forced to accept were very harsh. Article 231 forced Germany to accept the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage. Germany would also be forced to give up territories and colonies. The military was also severely restricted in size to limit any further aggressions. Germany also had to give guarantees to other countries to allow them to occupy Germany and to pay reparations. The terms were so strict, the newly elected head of the Republic of Germany resigned rather than sign this treaty. When the next head of state requested changes to the treaty, the Allies stated that they would invade Germany in 24 hours if the terms were not immediately accepted. This all set the tone for German citizens to feel slighted and unjustly treated. The stage was now set to ensure that Germany would be forced to use this pause in fighting to reorganize and regroup. Conflict would be on the horizon again very soon, and Germany would not forget how it was treated at Versailles.
Next, we're going to be talking about the Japanese invasion of China and how, when the Japanese invaded China, that could be a potential start date for World War II. Japan had their sights set on Manchuria for quite some time. Manchuria is a very resource-rich area of China, and Japan needed those resources since they're an island nation in order to kind of expand their war efforts. The invasion started when the Japanese army actually staged a sabotage of the railroad and blamed it on China. That was actually the Japanese army that destroyed part of the railroad, but they still tried to blame it on China, and that's what started the invasion. And then once the invasion took place too, they also occupied that area and was successful in the invasion and made a puppet state for Japan, so that way they had access to those resources. Now, the reason why I think that this is the starting point of World War II is because the invasion of Manchuria showed the world how powerless the League of Nations were. Now, the main goal of the League of Nations is to prevent future wars by solving disputes peacefully and kind of bringing negotiations to the table, and so that way things could be solved without war, without conflict. And once the Germans saw this, I think that kind of sparked their thoughts for future plans and actions.
An argument can be made that World War II began with the German invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939. The first shots of the war came from this German battleship in Danzig harbor. September 1st was the day Hitler changed his strategy. The box on the left lists elements of Hitler's expansionism without resorting to warfare. But on September 1st, 1939, that changed. From that day forward, Hitler used military invasions to achieve his planned expansion. The box on the right lists the 6 major German offensives during the war, starting with Poland. After Poland was invaded, both Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. We should consider this a world war because fighting Great Britain, Germany was at war with this huge worldwide empire with its vast natural and human resources. And the same goes for the French Empire. Importantly, the invasion of Poland drew the US into the conflict. While still officially neutral, the US had very early on decided to join the war on the side of the Allies. On the left are some of the US involvements after September 1939. Each one shows the US as being against Germany. In addition, 2 conferences were held in secret between Great Britain and the US to coordinate future strategic war planning between the 2 countries. For the US, this undeclared war led to the actual war and was a direct result of Hitler's invasion of Poland.
I would first like to define what I mean by a start date for World War II. I'll define start date as that point in time when the shooting started on a worldwide basis. The shooting started on a worldwide basis with Pearl Harbor. Prior to that event, the shooting was not worldwide. Yes, of course, there was cooperation between the US and the UK prior to Pearl Harbor. There were sanctions against Japan prior to Pearl Harbor. There were incidents involving the US prior to Pearl Harbor. And there were some preparations for war on the part of the US prior to Pearl Harbor. But for the US, the serious shooting began after Pearl Harbor, and there was no country in the Western Hemisphere other than Canada that had been significantly involved before Pearl Harbor. If we change the definition of start, we can change the start date. For example, if we say that World War II began at the point when a serious threat to the existing world order occurred, then we can set an earlier start date. But I choose to define the start date as when the shooting started worldwide, involving all major powers, and that occurred with Pearl Harbor.
There's 4 different options, and all 4 have their strengths and weaknesses. But as you can see, from the Treaty of Versailles to the invasion of Manchuria to the invasion of Poland and the bombing and attack of Pearl Harbor, all are valid choices for the start of World War II.